Section 2, the War of Currents, Edison versus Tesla. Okay,
So have you ever stopped to think about who actually invented the modern world? I mean, who gave us the foundation for the electrical grid that powers literally everything around us and predicted things like radio and wireless technology a whole century before they became part of our daily lives? And maybe the even bigger question, how could a guy with that much foresight, a man who basically built the future, end up dying completely penniless? Well, let's dive into this because the answer is one of the most fascinating and honestly heartbreaking stories in the history of science.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the brilliant yet incredibly tragic life of Nikola Tesla. This is a man whose mind was living a century in the future. We're going to break down his incredible rise, his bitter rivalries, and his devastating fall to really grasp how his genius shaped the very world we live in today.
To really get Tesla, you gotta understand what lit the fire. Picture this, it's 1870. A young Tesla is sitting in high school, completely mesmerized by a simple physics demonstration by his teacher. He later said those mysterious electrical experiments were what inspired him to know the extraordinary power of electricity. That one little spark ignited an absolute lifelong obsession. Section 1. The Spark of Genius. Tesla's origins. So, Tesla was born in 1856 in a tiny Croatian village. His dad was a priest, but here's the wild part. Tesla actually credited his freakish memory and his whole inventive mind entirely to his mom. Yeah, his mom. She didn't even have a formal education, but she was this brilliant woman who just ingeniously whipped up her own mechanical tools around the house. That raw, inherited creativity, that was the total bedrock of Tesla's future. His early years were, well, a total roller coaster. In 1875, he heads off to the Graz Polytechnic Institute, absolutely crushing it in engineering. But then, and this is a huge twist, he develops a severe gambling addiction and actually drops out of university in 1878. No degree. But you can't keep a genius down for long, right? He bounces right back. By 1881, he's the chief electrician at the Budapest Telephone Exchange. Then he's off to Paris working for the Edison Company. His talent was just so undeniable that by 1884, he was basically told to pack his bags and head to America. Section 2. The War of Currents. Edison versus Tesla. Okay, so Tesla lands in New York and gets a job working directly for the famous Thomas Edison. Sounds like a dream team, right? Actually, scratch that, it was a complete disaster. He lasted exactly 6 months before walking out. They had massive differences on how electricity should work, plus Edison kind of deceived him on a payout. Heartbroken and frustrated, Tesla tries to start his own lighting company, but that goes under too. So here you have this absolute visionary, completely broke, literally digging ditches in the streets of New York just to survive. Definitely not the American dream he signed up for.
But, things shift. By 1887, his luck turns when some investors back his new company, and boom, the War of the Currents officially kicks off. In one corner, you've got Edison pushing direct current, or DC. The big problem with DC, it loses energy super fast, so it can only travel really short distances. In the other corner, you have Tesla championing alternating current, or AC. AC was a total game changer because it could use transformers to crank up the voltage. It had the pressure needed to travel miles and miles without dropping power. Edison went on the attack, launching these vicious smear campaigns. But honestly, the science was absolutely 100% on Tesla's side.
The ultimate showdown? That goes down at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. Tesla's AC tech wins the bid to power the whole event. I want you to picture this scene. It's opening night. President Grover Cleveland steps up, pushes a single button, and bam! Hundreds of thousands of bulbs light up the fairgrounds like it's the middle of the day. There was literally no way anyone had seen anything quite like this before. It was a massive triumph that proved the total supremacy of Tesla's alternating current, and yeah, a pretty huge public humiliation for Edison. Section 3. Powering the Modern Age. Harnessing Nature. Riding high on that massive Chicago win, Tesla gets handed an absolute monster of a project, designing the Niagara Falls power system. We are not talking about a little local generator here. This was the world's very first large-scale hydroelectric plant. And he totally nailed it. The system was so insanely successful, it basically became the global blueprint for hydroelectric power. To put that into perspective, the achievement was such a big deal that there is still a statue of Tesla standing right there at Niagara Falls today. Now, Tesla's brain was always 10 steps ahead. In 1891, he whips up the Tesla coil. You've probably seen these. It's a transformer circuit that takes low current and cranks it into incredibly high voltage electricity.
visually, it was stunning. He'd have these actual lightning-like sparks shooting across his lab, lighting up bulbs with literally 0 wires attached. But here's what you really need to take away. This wasn't just some flashy party trick. The science behind that coil became the absolute foundation for radio and all wireless power transmission.
He pushes this to the absolute extreme in 1899, moving out to Colorado Springs to build these giant magnifying transmitters. He wanted to test wireless power on a colossal scale. And man, the stories from this lab are wild. Like in one instance, he creates this massive electrical surge and accidentally blacks out the entire town. Whoops. Oh, and it gets weirder. His equipment started picking up these strange, unknown radio waves. Tesla genuinely thought he was intercepting extraterrestrial signals. Yeah, aliens. It really just shows you how far out into the unknown the guy was operating.
Section 4, Visions and Failures, ahead of his time. All right, so here is the tragic part. For all his scientific brilliance, Tesla had a crippling lack of business sense. Plus, his ideas were often just way too far ahead of their time, meaning he rarely got the credit he deserved. Like, get this, way before Röntgen officially announced the discovery of X-rays, Tesla was already messing around with Crookes tubes and taking early X-ray photos in his lab. He also came up with a concept for a theoretical death ray, a directed energy weapon he claimed could wipe out enemies from miles away. It was never actually built, but still, the guy was a pure visionary, just absolutely terrible at capitalizing on those visions.
Which brings us to his most devastating failure, the Wardenclyffe Tower project. Tesla had this massive dream of providing global wireless communication and free power, so he starts building this colossal 200-foot tower to make it happen. But then, disaster strikes. Guglielmo Marconi manages to successfully send the very first transatlantic radio signal. Tesla's investors instantly panic, realize Marconi's method is cheaper, and just completely pull the plug on Tesla's funding. The whole project is abandoned, and Tesla just plunges into massive, inescapable debt.
That cascade of business failures, combined with his total, intense obsession with his eccentric ideas, left him incredibly isolated. Fast forward to January 1943. Nikola Tesla, the man who quite literally illuminated the globe, dies alone in a New York hotel room at the age of 86, completely penniless. And what's truly heartbreaking? His passing was barely even a headline. It was sadly just overshadowed by the global chaos of World War II.
Section 5, An Immortal Legacy, World Recognition.
But thankfully, society eventually caught up to his brilliance. In 1960, the scientific community officially cemented his immortality. They actually named the standard unit of measurement for magnetic flux density the Tesla. Think about that. From a whole museum established in Belgrade, to asteroids and awards bearing his name, all the way to Elon Musk naming his billion-dollar electric car brand after him, his name is forever synonymous with futuristic innovation. Time magazine even named him one of the top 100 most influential people of the entire millennium back in 2013. Look, a single explainer like this can barely scratch the surface of a mind this complex. If you're sitting there wanting to really unpack the mechanics of the AC motor, the Tesla coil, or the infamous death ray, there's a phenomenal resource derived directly from today's sources. You've got to read A Mysterious Genius, Nikola Tesla, published by the Royal Scientific Publications over at rsbd.com. It is packed with illustrations and deep breakdowns of his most important work. And hey, as an awesome bonus, if you use the code KIKINOKIVE10, that's all one word, you get 10% off that book and everything else on their site. It's the perfect way to spark that same scientific curiosity in yourself, kind of like that physics teacher did for Tesla. So, as we wrap things up today, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If a man who ultimately died penniless and in massive debt was the very architect who built our modern electrical world, what futuristic ideas are we completely ignoring today simply because they aren't profitable yet? It really makes you wonder about the true cost of prioritizing business over visionary science, doesn't it? Keep asking questions, keep learning, and thank you so much for joining me.